thoroughly know about accounting and tax implications as they pertain to SMEs in Nigeria. Today, I'm joined by two seasoned experts, Uzo and Kodri, as we discuss this topic. Uzo, this is your first time here. It's so nice to have you. Are you excited to be here?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Are you sure? That's you.
Yes,
and
I am.
This is your
Thank
second
you.
time here, Kodri. Thank you for joining us again. And so, just so we get right into the questions, I'd like to ask you, Uzo, why do you think that proper accounting is still a problem for SMEs in Nigeria today?
Okay, so over time, what I have noticed, spanning from WhatsApp CEOs, and this is as a result. WhatsApp CEOs, yes, and this is as a result of them starting the business due to survival. They need to survive. Then over time, the business then grows, while the small business owners have not grown in alignment with the business. So they keep their records on WhatsApp, their sales on WhatsApp, their expenses on WhatsApp, and then the only reliable record we have would be the bank statement. So what that has done is that they have looked at it as, I just need to survive to move to the next, to get the next food and all of those things. And then they are looking at it that, for me to start keeping these records, for me to just discipline myself to align
to do this properly,
properly, right? They are looking at it that, that means I'm now complying with the necessary regulatory authorities, and because they are not then regulated, they do not see the need to do it. But what they then need to understand is that there is the need for that mindset shift to happen. That you're not doing accounting because it's a compliance thing, or because it is a growth tool, right? When you then have that mindset shift and you then see accounting as a growth tool, you see it as something that helps your business, that helps you understand, this is what we've done over time, this is how we've transacted over time. We could actually scale now. We could now get one hand, two hands. Now I can delegate because I have the capacity, cash capacity, to be able to pay these persons when they come in.
I mean, even in an individual's life, it's just very good to have that structure where you can track, okay, this is what I spend, just things like that.
Exactly.
So that makes complete sense. Thank you so much. So coming to you now, Kodri, I'd like to ask, just based on what she has already said in terms of why it's important for, SMEs to have those accounting and that structure. What would you say is, or what are the most important accounting records for SMEs to keep?
Yeah, so that's a good question, right? Particularly, accounting records are very, very peculiar and necessary for every SMEs that wants to be financially, sound, financially healthy. So accounting records are not something an SME business owner, right, or a business owner wants to take with how would I put it? Once just takes it, let's sorry to skip my mind. Levity. Skip my mind. Sorry.
Can you just
start
so it's not something that
you can take with levity.
Okay, yes, sorry. So it's not something an accounting a business owner wants to take with a very small levity, right? So the core accounting records that should be kept, right, on the minimum level, the most important one, the most fundamental one is the sales report, right? So you want to understand the revenue that comes in, right? So and the transaction that led to that revenue, because the core reason why a business is being established, right, is for profit maximization. And the top line, we call something top line, the income statement, which is the revenue, right? So you want to understand how well the business has been able to generate revenue and sustain the business operations. So a proper recording needs to be kept, for revenue generation and to understand, what are the customers that contribute to the revenue base as well, right? So secondly, you also want to keep a proper recording on your expenses, right? Your expenses, particularly expenses that relates to cost of sales. What are the costs that are typically being incurred to generate this revenue? So proper recording should be kept pertaining to your cost of sales, to your expenses generally as well. When I say expenses generally, I'm talking about your operational expenses, your sales and general administrative expenses as well. So also you want to keep proper recording, that pertains to your cash position.
Yeah.
I mean, your cash book and your bank statement as well, right? So your cash book and your bank statement needs to be updated timely, right? So you need to know the cash position, because there's a popular say that cash is king, right? So it's very important that every SME, owner, right, keeps proper recording of their cash, right? To know, okay, what's the current cash positioning of the business as of today, right? So it helps you understand the inflows and outflow as well, and your bank statement also reconciling with your cash balances as well at the end of the day. So another important accounting record that should be kept by every SME owner is the inventory, right? So inventory is the lifeblood of the business, right? So I mean, most especially for many SME we have in Nigeria today, they are into the sale of either an FMCG item or something that is fast moving, basically, right? So you need to know how well your inventory is being managed, right? So when was the goods last purchased? How often do you replenish your goods as well? So you need to understand those movements of your stock as well. So I would say also that it's very important that you keep a proper recording of your debtor, and your creditor. You call that receivables and payable. So your receivables, you have to understand which customer, what customers are actually owing the business, right? And how we call past due as well. How long has it been outstanding? The receivables.
So you know how to follow
up and all of that, as well as your payable instance. Because you need to be able to manage, the relationship between your customers as well as your suppliers as well, because that will influence your working capital of the business at the end of the day. So I believe, those minimum accounting records should be kept for every SME. Because,
and I mean, these accounting records pertain to SMEs in any age.
Of course. So the thing is that when we talk SMEs, when we discuss SMEs in this context, it's regardless of the sector, right? It's regardless of the size, regardless of the growth level as well. So we are looking at SMEs that are just business that are just coming up, right? That their financial reporting strength is not that solid compared to its medium and the large size business. So it is very important that they keep this record, because a record that is being kept today, give clarity for tomorrow. The users of the business financial statement, even the management, let me say potential investors, right, would want to understand that, okay, if you are coming for a fund, how will have you been able to manage your books? Are you managing your books properly or not, right? So accounting record puts you in that position, for better tomorrow for the business.
You have said so much. You really came here to school us today.
Thank
you. So Uzom, we've covered, why we think it's a challenge. Kodri has taken us to the records that they should keep. What I would now like to ask is, so for SMEs who are currently still doing manual bookkeeping and the WhatsApp CEOs, as you put it, how do you think they can transition from that, manual system to actually setting up a structured accounting system?
Okay, so I think the first step, like I mentioned, mindset shifts. So you need to be ready to do the work, right? So once you have attained that, then the next thing is the need for you to distinct your personal activities from your business activities. So once we've crossed through Portal 1, Portal 2, and now we have the business, we are now looking at it. So you're still at that manual point, but there is a need for you to then structurally align yourself into the structured accounting. So at a minimum, you can start up with accounting softwares. Thankfully, we have quite a number of free to use softwares, accounting softwares you could pick up.
What are some of them?
We have Soho, we have QuickBooks, we have the affordable ones that are also subscribed to. We also have Zero, we also have Odoo, we also have Duplo, just to mention but a few, right? So these accounting software are aligned with the financial reporting standard, so it helps you keep your records, right? So all of these softwares I've mentioned aligns with keeping your sales records, keeping your expense records,
basically all the records,
everything that he has also mentioned. So you find yourself that they are also automated and integrated with your bank softwares. So if you do not really want to do the work all the time, all you just need to do is integrate it into the software, your bank statements or your bank account into the software. So at the end of probably you've already automated it to weekly, so once it comes in, it's because your information accordingly automated. So with that, you're pretty much already moving on a fast train, right? And then you see yourself then probably now looking at how do you report the information that has already been accounted for, right? So you then want to now take into consideration and getting the services of a professional accountant. Now, you might not currently, the cash capacity of the business might not have you having someone on a monthly, so you could then look at engaging the services at a quarterly basis or at a 6-month basis or an annual
really what
basis,
works best based on where the company
Yes,
is
exactly. So phase 1, mindset shifts. Phase 2, distinction between personal and business. Phase 3, moving from that manual to the software, right? So then phase 4, the engaging the services of the professional accountant.
That's wonderful. So then I would like to ask you now, so moving, from this foundational point, in terms of accounting standards, what affects the SMEs, or what are those standards that they should?
Yeah, so I'm so happy that you asked that question, right? Because it's a very important question that would agree with me that it needs a very precise and accurate answer as well, right? Because so what I observe, about SMEs owner, right? The CEOs, is that they believe that when it comes to accounting standard, methodologies, it should not apply to them because they believe, what is really their size, when it comes to that scalability, they are not really there, so they believe it's something that, they can actually just guess about the numbers. But really, there is a standardized IFRS accounting standard, right, for SMEs. So we call it International Financial Reporting Standard for SMEs. So SMEs being small and medium-sized entities, right? So this standard as well has been adopted by the FRCN, Financial Reporting Council of Nigeria, providing the guidance on how SMEs accounting, should be prepared, right? Because to be candid, this accounting standard provides, clarity, right? It is obviously less rigorous than a full IFRS accounting standard, but it gives that, comprehensive framework and as well as the ability for, SMEs to also adopt it, right? So I would say that IFRS for SMEs, right, provide guidance on how, these small and medium-sized entities should recognize their revenue, because revenue recognition is a very, very vital, aspect of the IFRS, because in the time past, there has always been like a disparity on how revenue should be recognized. So IFRS for SMEs provide that guidance on revenue recognition. It also provides guidance on, because, many of these SMEs, right, when it comes to their place of business, they are usually on lease, right? So it provides guidance on how lease should be accounted for, right? It provides guidance on how even the assets, let's say the small size, sort of like PPE that they have for their operation. It also provides how PPE should be accounted for, how PPE should be valued, and also any sort of like further obligations that pertains to the SME, how should that obligation be disclosed, right? So it's a very, very important aspect of SMEs accounting, right? Because the truth of the matter is that SME, right, are presently of today a small size business entity, right? But you would agree with me that they will not always remain to be a small size business. So according to the life cycle of every business, they will have to grow, and growing up requires investment, it requires scaling up. So proper standardization of the financial statement, right, it helps the business owner to be able to sort of like contact and have a conversation with investors, that are able to invest into the business, scalability. But without, credible financial statement, investors are not willing to just, put their money elsewhere, right? So they need to be assured that, okay, you've been actually paying attention to your financials. You're not just coming out to say that because you're SME and you're giving an excuse that, and that's the reason why you're not standardizing. You understand? So you need to pay attention to how your financial statement provide that credibility and comfort to investors. So IFRS for SMEs should be what every SME business owners, right, sort of like encourage and adapt to in Nigeria, because it provides that comfort and growth, for the tomorrow that they are working towards.
Thank you so much. This entire section has been so insightful, even for me. Just so we conclude, I'd like to ask as a final question, and shift it a bit from accounting into tax. So just what are those tax obligations that the SME should also consider while they are building this structured accounting system?
Okay, thank you very much, Zainab. So for starters, small medium business owners should take into consideration 3 tax headers or identifiers. So we're looking at it from the company income tax. So when they look at themselves, oh, I am not a company, you are, right? Then the second one is your transaction taxes, and then the third one is your personal income tax.
So when you say transaction taxes, we're speaking.
Yes, so we're going to break it down.
Okay.
So
Sorry,
okay, so for company income tax, we are then having the company income tax, which is assessed at the end of the year. So say January to December, right? And now because the tax bracket is 0 to 100 million. So long you're doing less than 100 million, you're still a small business in the face of the taxman, right? And as a result of that, you do not really need to pay any taxes. However, you also need to file your tax, right? Because that's how they would then know that you're a small business, right? So your tax base is going to be 0 because it's less than 100 million. And then the development levy, which you would ideally be assessed to, would also be 0 because you're less than 100 million. But the moment you cross the 100 million, then we're looking at 30% as your tax margin, right, on your taxable profits, and then your development levy is 4% on your assessable profits, right? So then moving on to transaction taxes, we're then looking at value added tax, which is assessed at 7.5% of valued goods and services, and then we're also looking at withholding taxes, which is at 2% to 10% on the necessary tax base, right? And moving on to personal income tax, we're then looking at it from the part of the owner and then also any other staff they would have. So your pay as you earn, where we're looking at it from 11% to 21% based on the new tax law, and any other associated statutory deductions, be it like your pension or HMO as they see fit. So pretty much those tax obligations are what is required by the small business owners to ensure that they comply with. Now, while we already have that tax margins in mind, there is a need for them to also have an understanding of this reporting period. So we have the company income tax being at the year end, but you have between, so say January to December, so you have between January to, correct me, 31st March or June 30, right, to file and ensure that is already done. Therefore, your withholding tax and value added, you have the next 21 days after you've collected the money to file and remit accordingly. Then you have your pay as you earn to also ensure that you that is filed and remitted within the next 21. Within the next 21 days after that has been collected, so you file and remit accordingly. So all of this information is readily available and publicly available. What you just have to do is reach out to us at any point in time and we'll be available to render that service.
Thank you so much, Uzo. Thank you, Kodri, for your time today. I'm Zainab Akredi and I've been your host. This has been the Business Pulse with Christy Pearl.